Jones. He's still got Mackay, still got Mackay, still got Mackay, and Mackay goals.
Gibbons talking about selling candy and kicking a beauty.
What about this ball inside 50? Control from nowhere. Wasting no time, Jack News. Set shot. He strikes it beautifully. He's got it. The Blues win it. Jack News after the siren has won the game for Carlton. That is unbelievable.
Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. My name's Ian. I'm joined as always by my good mate Lockie. And look, this was meant to be a nice, chill, easy episode, doing a little bit of a draft preview. You know, the nice little optimistic part of the season. Unfortunately, we were hit with some sad news about Liam Jones retiring from AFL and Carlton. He's not going to lace the boots up next season. And look, we're going to jump into chatting about that as well before we get into talking about these potential draftees. But Lockie, first, how are you, and how have you, been able to process all the news that's happened over the past week?
I'm good, thank you, my man. Thanks for asking. And yeah, look, it's on brand for us, I suppose, that there's got to be little hiccups along the way. You're never just going to get through an off season with no dramas like this. And yeah, felt like it was going to happen to some team at some point, and it just happened to be us first. So that's,
Yeah, of course it's us. It always is.
How were you when you found out that news?
Yeah, it was a shock. I was pretty devastated. I was hoping that he was going to figure it out and be able to play AFL footy. But yeah, you don't expect it to be something that's probably such a key pillar of the team. And yeah, I was pretty disappointed, pretty upset, but you just got to move on and go for the best. And that's sort of what I wanted to say. Like, look, this channel, we're not the vaccine corner, we're the Navy Blue corner. So we're not going to be getting all political and talking about that on the podcast. We're a footy podcast. That's what we're going to talk about. So we may as well jump into talking about Liam Jones this way. And now that he's gone, who do you see as, the replacement for Jones that we already have in the squad? Is there anyone that stands out? Do you think there's anyone, or do you want to go elsewhere? Where are you sort of thinking with trying to replace the big man?
It definitely presents an exciting opportunity and changes a lot of the thinking that we had in probably the last episode where we discussed where we saw things going. Obviously there's plenty of options to rattle off, but I'll start with, Lewis Young is someone that we thought, where is he going to fit into all this next season? Like, how early is he going to get a crack? And now it feels like it's going to be pretty early.
It's a weird one. He came in and obviously he wasn't getting a consistent game with the Doggies. It seems like if you move clubs, you're going to get a consistent game at the new club. And we're going to play three talls down back. Like, what's actually going to happen? Yeah, now I think that for me is the one that makes sense, particularly on height. I think you look at, and to throw other names out there like your Marchbanks, your Kemps, even a Gov gets thrown around, and those guys aren't necessarily that big, tall that can probably do it. Whereas, Lewis Young, I think he can probably come in, and hard thing is there isn't probably a perfect replacement for him. Like, we don't have that ready-made player. At least if on the positive side, Lewis Young's obviously, by his name, he is young himself. So him and Wiedering hopefully getting time to grow and become the key defenders for this football club over the next 10 years. Maybe that's an exciting little thing to look at. The other person who I kind of think could make sense to come in as well, because you look at Marchbank, and I always see him as maybe being that third tall plus. You maybe don't want to throw him in straight away as being the savior in the back line after these, how many years has he been out now for injuries, never been able to play consistently. You don't want to throw him in being the second key tall down there. And if Brody Kemp's probably not ready, Gov's never played down there. Big Oscar McDonald. I'm not too sure what's going on injury-wise for him, but he's a bit of an experienced body down there. And I was chatting to a couple of mates, and they raised a good point, saying you could almost use him as almost like a scapegoat back. For someone you can chuck in and just go, look, he's not going to be a superstar of the AFL compared to maybe like a Lewis Young, where there's a prospect. He's a bit younger, so you're hoping he can build up to something. If it doesn't go well early in the season with Oscar McDonald, no one's going to be surprised about that at all, is what I'm sort of trying to say there. So if we needed like a little stopgap at the start of the season, I think we've got bodies. But yeah, probably no one is the obvious choice of, yes, he's going to be better than Liam Jones straight away.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that analysis. I think there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to get a crack at some stage, or the beautiful mug makes an appearance. That's what we'd like to see, just for the viewers.
The I am Carlton mug from like 2008.
I love it. I'm jealous. I think exactly right on Oscar McDonald. The one that I'm kind of optimistic about, and the more that I think about it, the more I talk myself into it, is the idea of Gov going back. And I think the reason why I keep gaining optimism is I'm just reminded of Liam Jones, and we're looking to replace him. And I think it's probably fair to say that at this stage, like Gov is I don't know how to put this, had a higher ceiling for most of his all of his career than we would have thought Liam Jones did before the last few years. Like we've had big hopes for Gov his whole career, and we know that his best is great, and it just feels right. Like if he can it's a whole obviously different ball game going down into defense, but maybe he can take a leaf out of Jones' book in what he did, and do what Big Jezza does out west.
If we can get half the play his brother is down back, I'd be pretty happy. But I like that point where Jones was almost like struggling to be that forward, chucked him down back, became key pillar in our team. Can Gov go back and do that now? It's an interesting thing. I kind of hope he trains maybe somewhat in that capacity, maybe like a Levi Casbolt was in the squad, where you could throw him both ways and see what happens. I worry with Gov, though, just with his height. He isn't the tallest guy. I'm not too sure if he can play second key tall. But again, if it's him rather than a kid coming in there, potentially just getting destroyed and losing all their confidence, it could be okay in maybe those early stages in the season just to get some bodies down there. And I think bodies-wise, if everyone stays fit, if we can keep Marchie fit, keep Gov fit, which is obviously maybe hasn't happened over the last few years, I think there's enough players that can do that role, because whether you get someone like a delisted free agent, when you draft a young kid, no one's going to be able to come in my opinion, and be better than anyone else we have on the list playing those positions, which is maybe an issue, but also maybe a good way to look at it. And just, I wouldn't say like write off the season or anything like that, but to look at that back line and just go, you can almost play around with it, and no answer is going to be wrong, and you can at least have a few options and actually just test it out is what I kind of want to see. Because, I think eventually Lewis Young is the player I want, end of probably the season, to be nailed on being that second tall defender. But at least it's not just him down there.
Yeah, gee, imagine this conversation that we'd be having if we didn't pick up Young, just basically for nothing. We'd be,
So I guess on that, looking at players that are delisted, I guess free agents, or we can pick up in the national draft or pre-season draft, rookie draft, any of them. I don't know. There's about 30,000 of them. Don't know where those delisted guys land, but out of those that are still available, is there anyone that you would potentially like to take on that spot that Jones has left now? I think we've both agreed that they're not going to come in and be probably better than the players we have. But if we were maybe already struggling with having some bodies down there, if we're still worried about Marchbank, Gov, even McDonald was out all last year. If we need a body down there because we've lost a Levi Casbolt as well, who's a tall, is there anyone that you're looking at going, I wouldn't mind him just as a body?
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I'm hoping another Hugh Greenwood situation is going to go down. And I don't know, the D's just delist Stephen May or something, and we just swoop in. Probably amazing. My number one. Yeah, I don't know. I'm keen to know who you think is out there and gettable. I mean, like who is there with the height? Like, the name that comes to mind is like Townsend. Is he somebody that you've thought about at all? Like, he's not as tall, but like, I don't know.
I've got a couple of names. And again, none of them are, you hear the name and you go, oh my God, problem solved.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But I'll start off at maybe some that are on the lesser end of it. So first one will be Connor Ballenden from the Lions, who got delisted. He's 199 centimeters. So he's got the height on his side. He's 22 years old as well. So he is that little bit younger. So maybe you're looking for someone with a bit of potential. He originally started playing a bit as a forward and then moved in the last season or so in defence, playing a bit of ruck as well, almost similar to Lewis Young. But for me, I just worry that he's another one of those young guys that hasn't gone on at the club he's at? And then what are we picking up? Because there's a chance that maybe he's matured now, and you see sometimes at some teams, they have him for a few years and they go, he's not breaking in, we can't do anything, and maybe they go to another team and all of a sudden it clicks. Maybe he's that kind of player. He's someone available, but I probably wouldn't like him. Do you have much thoughts on Big Connor?
Gee, my knowledge of Big Connor, you'd be astonished to know it's not a whole heap. So I'm going to be optimistic to anybody in case we do end up doing it. So I'll say big yes to Connor.
Well, you'll love the next guy I've got because I reckon you'll have even less knowledge on him. It's Ryan Garthwaite, who played at Richmond. So he has only been there, a couple of years. He's, I think, 23, so a little bit older, 1 year older than Big Connor. 192 centimeters. Just never broke into the Richmond team. They sort of, when Rance retired, they were like, oh, is he going to be the kid that steps up, takes that role? Never really, unfortunately, did it. Was a bit in and out of the team. I think he's a bit similar to that. But I thought I'd throw a couple of maybe younger guys out there rather than some mature bodies to start. I guess, have any thoughts on him either?
Well, I mean, I guess both these players, if I'm going to pull a positive out of there, they're both coming from teams that have had success in recent years. They've been in the good part of the ladder. I'm going to say they've been in at least good systems. So if you were pitching me a player that was struggling to get into the North team, maybe I'd have a different thought. But again, I'll stay optimistic.
Yeah, no worries. So the next two, I think, are a lot better options, but I thought I'd just throw out a couple of names, get the discussion going. So I don't know, maybe there's a massive Ballenden fan in the chat who's going to be commenting on this podcast, letting us know he's the Jet, he's the one we've got to get. But these next two, I think, if you had to use the last spot on the list for these guys, I'd be okay with it. So first one is Michael Hartley, whose name's been thrown around a little bit. Unfortunately, he couldn't break into Hawthorn's side pretty much ever since going there from the Bombers. But he's 27 years old, so he has that experience on his side. 199 centimetres, so has the height. He's not a bad football player. He's probably just that kind of bang average kind of guy. If everyone else breaks down and you have to throw him in there, I think you're okay with that. But it's not a glamorous pick by any imagination.
Yeah, feels kind of, I don't know, a bit Oscar McDonald-esque where someone, he's definitely not, he's a bit deeper in and he's had a bit of a crack. But look, like you said, we're in this situation now and we have to fill this hole. And if it was someone like him, I definitely wouldn't be upset about it.
The next one's probably it's the last one and probably my favourite out of all of them. I will butcher his last name because I don't exactly know how to pronounce it, but delisted from Port Adelaide, Jared Leanett, I believe is how you say his name. 195 centimetres. He's also 27 years old. I think he's better than Hartley. I think he's serviceable. Every time I've seen him play for Port, I thought he was an okay, handy player. They've obviously got a lot of depth in tools, so they've gotten rid of him. The reasons I may be a little bit talking myself into this as being optimistic is Bossy knows him. He's played at Port, so Bossy would know whether he's going to be the right player. Maybe the worry is I think he's a little bit smaller, so maybe he'd be more suited to the third tall rather than the key. But he's a good distributor by foot, which is maybe something that we're lacking. So if we need a body, if we're literally just desperate, need a mature guy to come in, I think he can do a lot worse than bringing someone like him in, at least for just a season until we maybe find the right person.
Yeah, exactly. I think like you said, as long as we've got some form of health, we hopefully will not be having to use this, whoever we do replace Jones with, giving too much responsibility. But I like where you're going with it. I think for me, I probably do lean maybe towards the guys that are a bit older, but have had a bit more of a crack. So they're a bit more ready now. But look, and I like the Voss angle that you mentioned too.
Yeah, look, and probably the next question is, this is, I guess, the draft preview. So we'll chat about it. And that is, does this now change how, I guess, if you were the list manager, what you're going to do in the draft? Because it looked like Austin was coming out saying it was like the mid-forward is what we're looking for positional-wise. Would you almost now look to try and get a key defender in this year's draft and hope to get someone for the future? They don't have to come in and play straight away, but get the Jones replacement now. And then also, I guess, there's another question on top of that. Do you think that we might get a compensation pick in the draft and then maybe use that as well?
Yeah. Well, the second one's a very interesting question. I think potentially you and I have a bit of a different feeling about the draft this year, where for me, I'm a bit more, I don't know, maybe I have a bit less certainty when you get to that kind of area of the draft, that I'm a bit more best player available rather than trying to fill a specific position. Whereas I tend to lean the other way when you have a higher pick. So for me, it probably doesn't change that much. I'd still say let's roll with whoever we think is the best long-term prospect, because I'm not wanting this guy to be coming in and taking the second best key forward from day dot. But the second question is really, really interesting. I've seen some actual quality opinions going around about that, about how this is, not to get too political on it, but essentially forced, kind of forced the club's hand with this as well as Liam's. I kind of, if I had to guess, I'd say yes. I think there is going to be some kind of compensation, to be honest.
It's hard because, if we're going to somewhat talk about it, it's the fact that it's not written in his contract when he signed it that he needed to take a vaccine and that was going to be part of it. It's something that they now have to do. And he has his beliefs, and he believes that strongly that he will turn down his job, his dream of what he loves, playing AFL football. And then where the club's now in this predicament where a couple of months ago, this wasn't anything I guess we necessarily needed to worry about because it wasn't a protocol. Now it is. So should we be compensated because it's not necessarily the club's fault? It's not like a Gold Coast delisting a player and then all of a sudden they wanted to get him back and North swooped in. He's left because of the mandate that's come in. It's a hard one. I'm not too sure exactly where I sit. My Carlton bias says yes, give me a pick. Give me bloody number one pick.
First rounder.
I kind of think if I was if this, say, happened to random team, Hawthorn, a Hawthorn player decides to go out, I would hate them to then compromise our pick in the draft by getting compensation. So I think it depends exactly where it is. I'd love it maybe an end of second rounder, and maybe that's a fair kind of spot. Everyone should have had at least a pick, if not two picks, and then you go from there. I worry if it's anything early, then there's obviously going to be those issues. You can talk about the free agency compensation picks and where they line up and what that's worth if you want to as well. But I think hopefully something will happen. I just have a feeling the AFL will be like, no, you can maybe just have the first pick in the rookie draft or something instead. I don't think it's going to be big concessions for us, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying. The way I think about it, I'm trying to take this in. So, we know that Jones is in our probably, fair to say, 10 most important players.
I'd agree.
And I wonder whether that comes into consideration. So say, what's a good example? Like say Lachie Neale did the same thing. Or whoever saying that he's Brisbane's best, say that he's their best player. Would you then... Would you then feel more lenient on that, or feel not as hard done by if Brisbane did, say, bump us down to pick 26?
Yeah. I mean, probably. If it's it's a hard thing for Jones because he's not consensus. Everyone goes, he's a really good player. And it's a hard thing. And then if you look at Carlton and you look at our list, he becomes more important for other aspects. But if he's in another team, is he down the order? And then does that change the dynamic? So it's an interesting conversation, and I honestly haven't really landed on it 100%. But probably as far as me going and looking at the draft and changing what we're doing, and we'll get to that. I'll bring out some options potentially in that draft range.
Awesome.
Of where we're currently picking from and who we maybe can pick up in that defensive stocks, but there's not a lot of them, and I think next year there is apparently a lot more of the key tools. So I would hate for us to, I kind of do what maybe you're alluding to, where you don't pick the best available. You go, we just need a tool. And it's like, well, if he's not going to develop into being the player, because we're not playing him right now, then what's the point? Find the right key defender if you can. If not, look elsewhere. So I'm kind of maybe more in that ballpark of pick the best available rather than completely changing your strategy just to fix this one need that I feel like anytime you start to do that and you start to reach for guys, that's when trouble ensues. Is there anything, I guess, you wanted to chat on, I guess, the Liam Jones situation before we go a bit more into the National Draft preview?
No, I'm excited to hear it. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how this plays out because, I'm just really interested to see how the AFL plays this with this situation because, yeah, if they don't give us anything, then that seems like absolutely ridiculous. And then if they say, well, he's one of your best players, so we're going to replace him with a really good pick, then that also seems a bit far. So yeah, excited to see how it plays out. Let's get into it.
100%. And let us know who you reckon is going to be the replacement, because we'd love to get your thoughts on that one. So yes, the draft preview, why we're here. So it looks like Brad Lloyd, Nick Austin came out and said it was like half forwards and sort of these midfielder forward kind of player. And for the astute listeners of the podcast, you might be going, hang on a minute. I remember in the last episode, you guys saying you're not experts and you're probably not even going to do a draft preview. And look, fair enough. And I will 100% say I'm no expert. But I did end up having a little bit of spare time that I didn't think I'd have. So I thought I would deep dive, and I've spent a bit of time on this now. I'm 100% not saying that I know these players 100%. I've watched every single one of their games. I've done a lot of reading. I've watched some highlights. I've watched a couple of games here and there. Come up with a bit of a list and tried to give a bit of insight. So I'm going to do my best for this one, because I thought at the end of the day, why not chat about something to do with Carlton? And I'm sure you guys will enjoy the content as well. So I guess let's get straight into this. So firstly, what I've tried to do is almost break it up into a couple of categories. The first being, I guess, these players that they're almost projected to kind of slide a little bit, because as everyone will know, with the COVID interrupted season for the second year in a row, a lot of these players, we just don't know for the Victorian guys where they're going to go. And if you look at everyone's phantom drafts, I've written down every single one I could find. And there's just so many fluctuations of where guys, they believe they'll get picked up. So there's a couple here that I think they still probably won't reach us, but there's a potential that they get near enough to us that I think if we ended up wanting to trade up to try and snag these guys, I wouldn't be against it. So I'll throw up the first one here. It is Tyler Sonzi from the Eastern Rangers. He's a midfielder, 181 centimetres. To basically what kind of player he is, he's sort of a do-it-all midfielder, but he can kick goals as well. So looking at his strengths, here we go. So he's good with scoreboard impact, clean hands, kicking, clearances, composure, and agility. His improvements, so the areas that I guess he isn't as great at, is his consistency and his gut running. Basically when I was looking at him, his probably draft range is around that 15 to 20. When I was watching him, he seemed like the guy that can almost do it all. He can play that inside, he can play that outside. And I just feel like at the moment, if you look at our squad, the big point of difference that I think we're lacking is a midfielder that can do that can do the outside, do the inside, do the outside, and then actually go and kick goals while playing in the midfield. And that's what this guy can do. And he can win the ball in the contest. He's clean, he's crisp, he loves to get the ball moving. And yeah, I think his negatives have just been that he's struggled maybe to play that full quarters. It's like when he is in the game, he's having a big impact, but then he can just go missing at times. So that's probably why he's going to slide a little bit. And there's a lot of expectation on him. He's probably one of the better players from Eastern Rangers. And then he just almost went missing a couple of times in games. But yeah, he's that kind of player. If we're looking for someone to play in the wing, half forward, or even eventually just become that midfielder that can change. Because if you look at the midfielders at the moment, it's very inside ball. And it's almost Walshy and maybe Chera on the outside. So that's why I've highlighted Tyler Sonzi as an option. What do you think about him?
Yep, I like the sound of that. I mean, I completely agree with you about the weaknesses, and like on a very high level, and it's superficial not seeing him play, but you'd like to think that something like gut running is something that can come with time and different training regimes and being around the professionals. So so is he somebody that you think potentially that there could be a reach trading up for?
I'm not too sure we will do any trading up. So maybe it's redundant for me to bring these guys up, but I thought there's a chance that maybe they do slide and end up. They are available near us, but I don't know. I think if this and the other guy I'm going to talk about, if they're available a couple of picks, say what we've got, pick 25, if they're available like pick 20 and you can get that deal done with not having to give away too much else, I'd be looking to hand that over basically. But I'm not too sure if they're going to reach, because honestly, when I say, I guess, the rest of the guys that are available, I do think there's also so many options in this kind of player that I'd be happy to almost sit back and take the best available, because I think there's quite a lot in this draft.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Beautiful. So the next one in this, I guess, trading up scenario is Campbell Chesser. So this man here
Oh, great name.
He's a sort of mid defender. So he plays a bit on half back as he pushed up and played a little time on the wing. 186 centimeters from Sandringham Dragons. His strengths are speed, kicking, class, versatility, outside run, and breaking the lines. His improvements are contested game and tackling. So looking at this guy, I had him at probably his draft range around picks 18 to 25. I think there's a chance he's more likely than Sonzi that he could be available at our pick.
Sure.
Mainly, I think because of some of his deficiencies. So look, the wing position, it's a big hole on our list currently. I think this could be the guy to have that fit because he's quick and he loves breaking the lines. Having, I guess, played off the half back, we seem to have so many of those players. But he's fast enough and crisp enough that he can move a little bit higher up the ground, almost maybe like a Doherty has, and we utilise him that way. So I like that he's that little bit, I guess, versatile. He's clean and composed with his ball work. I guess the big issue is really just that he struggles with that sort of contested side of the game. And when you sort of look in history of guys that have maybe been the draft busts, it's been maybe some of those that struggle to win a lot of the ball and win the contested side of it. So that's maybe the issue with him, but he's had some issues with form and injuries this season as well, which has maybe hampered him. And the fact that he hasn't played a lot in 2 seasons, maybe that's why he hasn't got that consistency in there. I still think that he's got a bit of a smaller frame, which might be the reason that he sometimes struggles to make those tackles and do those sort of things. And in an AFL system, I reckon you can definitely build those up. And in the right system with this hopefully better defensive system that we're going to have, I think he could be someone that really thrives.
Yeah, no, you've sold me on him. Yeah, I love an alliterated name, just like my own. So that's already a big tick.
Nice.
And yeah, I feel like, I feel like those attributes are some things like the speed and the quality ball use. It like because we've been lacking that over the past few years and been calling out for someone in this mold. I feel like I'm drawn to it. Yeah, he sounds exciting.
Yeah, I think particularly for the wing role, he doesn't really do a lot of that, I guess, forward craft, but having that extra midfielder that can just stay out wide and do all the outside things, because that's what he's good at. He's that perfect outside player. And maybe he doesn't need to do those contested ball things if we can actually play the right way and utilize our wingers the correct way. So, yeah, he's an interesting one. We'll see on draft night if he slides to us. And now the next people are guys, I guess, that are a bit more in our range. So the first name that I'll bring up here is Matthew Roberts. So he is a mid-forward. He's 183 centimetres from South Adelaide. There's a bit of a snapshot. He's a hard-working mid-half forward. So very similar to kind of what we're looking for that position-wise. His strengths are production, contested ball, work rate, scoreboard impact, football smarts, and consistency. Where he, I guess, lacks is his athleticism and composure. So a couple of interesting things there. Where I've got him in the draft range, I've got him around 20 to 30. Looking at, I guess, just a snapshot here, if you look at Cal Toomey's 3 Phantom drafts, so he did one in September, October, and November so far. He had him 17th, 27th, and then he wasn't even in his top 35 in the one he released the other day. So it seems like he's sliding out of contention in a couple of people's books. There's other people that they're liking instead of. So that's why I think that he should be available in this range. And for me, it's a bit of an interesting one. The phrase, what you see is what you get, it seems to get thrown around a lot with this kind of guy. He sort of is that works hard for every single possession. As I mentioned, he's not that agile. He's not super athletic. He's just that hard worker runner who does everything to try and win the ball. And he seems to do pretty well at doing that. I guess my concern with this player in particular is I think his best work is done in the midfield as almost a bit more of like an inside midfielder. And while he has played he's played a bunch of footy in the forward line as well, like half forward. He's taken some good marks and he has been able to kick goals. And I think because of his hard work, he still finds a way to win the ball and make things happen. But I think if I'm looking at everyone else on this list that I'm going to name and what I think we need for this mid sort of half forward, I'm looking for X factor. I'm looking for flair, a bit of speed. I'm not sure he has that. And I think, Matty Robertson could be a really good footballer, but I'm just not sure he fits exactly what we're after in this player. Yeah, that's sort of the profile I have on him.
Yeah, I like that take. And just to kind of, I suppose, reiterate what you were saying earlier, the thing that excites me about where we're picking this year is the fact that we could potentially get one of these diamonds slip
Mm,
through, like someone like this, like you said, that was a first rounder, and then in Cal's books to not even in
mm,
contention for that cream of
yeah.
the crop, and we might just be able to pull something out here as long as we go for someone with a high
Mm.
ceiling, pull off something crazy.
And the good thing with him is he's obviously played consistently throughout it, playing for South Adelaide. He's been playing in the Santos, so big, playing with mature bodies and still playing well, and then
Mm,
actually not having an interrupted season. So maybe you see us go for a couple of these players that have played consistent football because you kind of know a little bit more of what you're getting than some of the Victorian guys. So he's definitely a
sure.
name to look out for. The next one, you probably might recognise the name here. It is let this come up. It is Sam Butler.
Hello.
So he is a mid forward, 184 centimeters, from the GWV Rebels. Is a half or sort of small forward who can push up the ground and play midfield as well. His strengths are clean hands, acceleration, forward craft, defensive work, and athleticism. His improvements will be kicking consistency and decision making. Now, as I said, you might recognize this name. He is, of course, the brother of Dan Butler. And I think most times you see a brother or something like that, you go, oh, he plays exactly like him. Weirdly enough, he does seem to play quite similar. But I do think that Sam himself probably has a bit of a higher ceiling. And I think he can play
Mm,
a little bit better in the midfield as well. From what I've seen, when he pushes up into there, seems to win a lot of the footy. He knows what he's doing in there, and then he explodes forward as well. And whereas I think his brother tends to do his best work maybe in that forward line, so it's a bit of a point of difference. And yeah, pretty much one of his biggest traits as well is that defensive pressure. He absolutely loves to tackle. He's desperate to win the ball back, which is something I think we need, whether he's in the midfield or whether he is up forward.
mm,
And as I mentioned, he played a lot of time in the midfield, which means he knows how to win his own ball, which is maybe compared to a Chesser that struggled with a little bit of that inside game. I think Sam Butler's really good at that, and he's sort of so good when he runs and speeds up and accelerates into the contest, wins the ball, and then just sprints forward. Very similar to I think how his brother plays when they are running down those lines. It's very exciting, and I think that this guy is that he's kind of like that flair player. He's got the speed, he's got that little bit of X factor. And yeah, I like the fact that he, I guess, can play that small forward if you need him to, can play half forward, play him on the wing, or even
mm.
give him time to pinch hit in the midfield. He can sort of do everything. And I worry that he won't be there. I have him, I guess, in that 15 to 25 range. He's someone that seems to be jumping up the draft boards and he seems to get higher every time I see it. So
Mm.
I don't think he's going to get to us just, but he's probably the best out of all of these players as far as what they've shown so far.
Sure. Yeah, that excites me. I mean, saying that he potentially has a higher ceiling than Dan Butler, look, we'll take that. I think we'll take
Mm,
that with pick 25 in the draft. And yeah, that like I said before, give me these guys that have the big upside.
yeah.
And then, like you said, like the defensive and tackle stuff. We can never get enough
Mm,
of that with our current lineup.
And that was probably the thing when I was looking at a few of these that are that kind of half forward mid, because we seem to have so many of those on the list. And I guess some of the times you go, oh, they go missing in games. Do they win enough of the football? Do they
Yeah.
tackle enough? They're all things that we have of players currently, and seeing this in some of the reports of some of these players as well, you're starting to get a little bit worried. But seeing that, Sam Butler, he
Yeah,
just loves to tackle. He's that pressure kind of guy. It gets you excited. I guess the next guy
for
I've got
sure.
to come through here is Zach Taylor. So him himself, he's from the Calder Cannons. He's a mid forward, 180 centimeters. He does exactly that. He can play and push up onto the wing, into the midfield, but can also play and predominantly sort of played as that sort of small forward. His basically strengths are
Mm.
skills, smart, kicking, evasion, and work rate. So I like to see work rate in this. It's definitely something I feel like has
Yeah.
been a bit of a criticism of some of our players. His improvements are strength and inside game. So
Okay.
looking at him, his draft range seems to be about 20 to 30. He's another one that seems to keep jumping up draft boards, which worries me because he's
Mm.
probably one of my favourite players out of all the guys I'll name here. He actually took out the Calder Cannons best and fairest as well. So that's going to be a big honour and clearly something that you don't take lightly. And yeah, so I think he's really good by foot, and he'd probably be the perfect guy to be delivering the ball inside 50, whether he's playing that wing or half forward role. He can find the ball as well. He averaged 34 disposals over a stretch of 3 games in the NAB League. So he is absolutely exploded.
Yeah, wow.
He had a really big finish to the actual season itself. His numbers in those last games, which is where he started to average that, compare incredibly well to Dacos and Ward, who are meant to go picks 1 and 3 or 4. So if it's hard because he didn't have the full season. Could he have gone on and then become a top 10 draft pick off the way he was actually going? You see so many times in the last 5 or so games of the season, all of a sudden, no one was thinking he was going to get drafted, and now they're a second round, first round pick. It can happen so quickly. So it's hard that some of these players maybe haven't had that time, and maybe seeing that he was able to do that in the little glimpses is exciting. I guess the knocks on his game or his inside, and then sometimes he does struggle to hit the scoreboard, which is maybe a little bit of an issue if we did want that sort of forward side to it. I guess on his inside game, I was sort of saying quite a lot that he uses his agility and his sort of body movements to evade and to win in the contest rather than his brute strength, because he's got a pretty small frame. He's not the tallest guy. And so while that's a knock, I think that if he's not winning the ball because he's just not strong enough, but he's still managing to win it because his agility and his athleticism, that's exciting to me, because I think the strength is just something you can build up in an AFL system. He's only 18, so not going to be the biggest anyway. And as far as goal scoring, I think that's another thing that can improve as well, just by playing more. But on the flip of that, if he isn't kicking the goals, but he's the one that's setting up from every single touch, like it seems like he's doing at the moment, I don't think that that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and as back to your point before, I think seeing drafting a player that led their team and came up with the best and fairest, you got to have some kind of confidence when that happens. I mean, adding another Zach to the mix, I don't know about that. There could be a bit of a power struggle there. Do you if you had your full Carlton hat on now, and for some reason Butler and him were still available, would you still be taking Butler first?
It's hard. I've honestly started to fall in love with Zach Taylor. The way he plays. I think Butler is definitely the better player now. And maybe he fits a little bit better because of his goal scoring ability. But I feel like Zach Taylor could probably play that almost like wing role maybe a lot better, personally.
Sure.
I think if you're asking me right now, I'd probably pick Butler just because of what he's shown maybe a bit more consistently. But I think that they're a lot closer than maybe some are giving them credit.
Yep. I like the sound of that. Who's next?
Next one is this man here, Blake Howe. So he is a forward mid, is 190 centimeters. He plays for the Sandringham Dragons. Basically, he is that tall wingman that seems in vogue at the moment, or a bit of half forward. So he plays a bit of both. His strengths are vertical leap, overhead marking, clean hands, athleticism, and upside, which is an interesting strength that they've put there. But I'm happy to see it. His improvements, it's very similar to a couple of these guys. It's consistency and the contested game. So where I've, tried to put this guy in the range, I see him going anywhere from sort of 20 to 30. So I think these guys, he definitely should be available at our pick, I reckon. I reckon he's a bit more that 25 end of the draft selections there. It's interesting though, because he's 190 centimeters. He's basically this modern tall winger that seems to be the thing that everyone is doing at the moment. He's super athletic, he's mobile, and he doesn't play like his height. You look at a 190 centimeter and you're going, it's almost key position. He's just not that. He can take a grab, and he seems to be a bit of an outlet. They've pushed him up on the ground at times on the wing, used him as that sort of contested mark. Even in the forward line, he's taken a grab. I think there's a potential that if you chucked him in the forward line, he could play as a third tall if you needed him to, because of his athleticism. He can play as a small. It reminds me a little bit of JSOS in that aspect of can play tall, can play small. I think he's a little bit faster. I think he's a little bit maybe more skillful than a JSOS. And I mean, if we want to go that really tall winger that seems like, again, everyone's doing at the moment, this is kind of that guy to do it. But again, maybe is there issues of the the consistency in that inside game being where these draft busts happen. And is that, I guess, a worry?
Yeah, very fair points. I mean, for me, it is funny to list upside as a strength, but I suppose that's exactly like I've said. That's what I'm hoping we go for with this. I'm not really interested in us bringing a bloke in and we're like, all right, well, the best case scenario is that he just makes it into our team at some point when he's in his peak. Like he's always going to be kind of around it. Like I'd rather us go for someone that's like, look, he could be a bust, but he's got kind of star potential in the upside. And yeah, the kind of build that you said, like this is different to the other players that you've named and with his height and that kind of difference. So yeah, there's no one that I'm turning my nose up at. I'll give you that.
And yeah, and even talking, about what you mentioned with the upside, it sort of is because he isn't a finished article by any stretch. And I think the fact that they've moved him around a little bit and he hasn't sort of nailed down 100% a role is maybe the reason why they're like, he's got upside because of just his raw attributes, but he just maybe hasn't shown the consistency and being a proper, I guess how some people say we're picking athletes over footballers. He's definitely more on that side of he's got all the athletic traits to be a complete superstar if he can get it together. He's shown some good signs, but it's sort of, do you pick just the upside of just what the talent could be there, just I guess off build and natural ability that way. So it's an interesting one. Next player is another name that I think you may be somewhat, I guess, familiar with. Let me get this one up here. It is Jesse Motlop. So the Motlop name, you might recall this man here. So he, let me get this going. He's a forward. He's 177 centimeters, plays for South Fremantle. He's basically this small pressure forward. His strengths are forward craft, skills, agility, clean hands, confidence, and football smarts. All great strengths. His improvements are consistency, production, and strength. So obviously he's a little bit of a smaller guy, so strength is always going to be an issue with him. And look, I think when you hear the Motlop name, you immediately just think X Factor, and I think Jesse's really no difference. He's crafty, he's skillful, he's silky. He honestly, if you're looking for the easiest, I guess, to put it, Eddie Betts replacement in this whole draft, he is the X Factor small forward that will play a kind of a similar way. I think that's where you're kind of looking at him. I'm not too sure how well he can go, I guess, pushing up into more that midfield half forward. I see him definitely being more that small kind of pressure, X Factor, silky, evading everyone, and all of a sudden he picks up magical goal. That's where I see him being. And I guess that is something that we're still kind of looking at. We've got Corey Durden, who we got the year before. We've got an Owies, a Honey, these kind of players. No one's 100% nailed it down. And I think you can never get too many guys that just have the skill. And when you look at him, just the way he evades and uses his footy IQ, his agility, it's exciting. And I think, the knocks on being like consistent and things like that, I think that just happens as well, being a small forward. Not always you're going to be in the game. So, I think he's got that. He's got that little bit of X factor. And if you can put it all together, it could be an absolute find, particularly this late in the draft, because I have him going, I guess, 20 to 30.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely would never be mad with us taking a crack on someone with that name. And X Factor. That's what we want at this kind of area. I mean, the height is probably the only thing that I do point out because, I don't know. It feels like, we obviously got Dirds from last year and, always is going to be around there. I just wonder whether, how many guys in that really small mold you can have in like a best 22. But the X Factor that you mentioned, like give it a crack and see what he can do.
I think that's why I'm probably similar to you, where I was looking at all these other guys and seeing that they could do a little bit of the small forward craft, but they could, push up, play a bit of the wing, really move the chains. They have really good acceleration and able to break the lines and set up goals and things like that. And that's probably where, if we didn't have Corey Durden from last year's draft, I'd be like, get Motlop in, best replacement.
Sure.
But now that I think we almost have a couple that are in that similar mold, while there's a chance Motlop could be better than all of them, I kind of maybe prefer some other options just for that versatility. Whereas I'm not sure Motlop has what it takes to be that dual sort of position player. I think he's just that you lock him in the small forward and let him create some magic.
Yeah, 100%.
Beautiful. So next, I guess, couple, they're a little bit, I've called them maybe the draft smokies. So they're those that I think will definitely be available because there is a chance that all of these guys are gone by our pick. For whatever reason, everyone's gone. I've listened to this podcast and they've gone, yep, superstars, we'll draft them before Carlton get that chance. I believe these two will definitely be available, but they've started to get a little bit of hype over the past couple of weeks and months. So the first man, you'll love the name here. It is Judson Clark. You never have too many Juddies at the football club, I tell you what.
Oh, no.
So this guy I think he's incredible, to be honest. He is a small forward. He's 179 centimeters, plays for the Stingrays at Dandenong. As a snapshot, he's basically a small sort of half forward that can push up and do a little bit in the midfield. You'll hear me say this basically about all these players because that's what I've researched and I've tried to find these guys. His strengths are speed, agility, goal sense, clean hands, run and carry, and smarts. I think that ticks like all the boxes of everything that we wanted. His improvements, like a few of these guys, is contested game and also tackling. Again, similar to someone I mentioned earlier, big reason I think tackling is an issue with him is he's very skinny. He has no size on him. But this kid, he's lightning quick. He's agile as anything. He's a really exciting small forward prospect. And they started to, I guess, move him up the ground in the, I say later part of the season. There wasn't much of a season. And he started to do some work up around the ball. And he actually looked okay, pushing up onto that wing, doing a couple of things. He impressed this season, averaging 18 disposals a game in the NAB League, playing primarily as a small forward, which I think we've said so how many countless times our small forwards and these kind of players, they're in and out of games, they haven't touched the ball enough. This guy knows how to find footy, and I think he's one of the really exciting prospects. And as I mentioned, with that small frame and struggling to tackle, he does seem to get to the tackle, like he gets to the contest, perhaps his arms, but then they just break away. So while it's a negative, I think the upside on that is it's not like he isn't tackling. It's not like he's not getting near him. He's trying his hardest and he's running both ways. He just doesn't have the frame potentially to really lay the tackle and get it done. But I think he's a really smart player. He's just incredibly fast, which you can never have enough of. And I just think he could be a really smart asset and someone that maybe is a reach on the night. But I wouldn't say reach because I think this guy could be a genuine gun.
Yeah, 69 kilos. He is a slender man, and I mean that's the thing. We're not looking for big Juddy to come in round one and come straight into this team. He's going to have the time to develop and hit the gym and put the kegs on. So yeah, I'll join you. Excitement, reach up.
Yeah, and I have him sort of, I guess, in that sort of 25 to 35 range as well. It seems like on a lot of the phantom drafts, he tends to be like pick 35 on a few of them. But he's slowly creeping up, and I'm hearing more people talk about him. I was listening to, I think it was Gary and Tim on, I think they're on SEN, and they had Toomey and Beveridge. And like that was one of the names they brought up as like this exciting prospect that not a lot seem to be talking about, but he could be one of those absolute steals that you get. And yeah, I mean, with a name like Judson Clark, I'd be very happy to get a new Juddy. The number 5 is available as well. So do we give him that one?
Can't go wrong. Cannot go wrong.
Exactly. Another one. It's strange. I feel like I'm getting more excited about these players that are a little bit further away from our pick. That normally you go, no, you want the players that are the stars in the top teams. And I'm getting excited about these like they're projected to go 35. But the next one as well is someone that has actually been linked to us. Apparently we've interviewed and we've chatted to a bit. You may have seen his name in the media a little bit. It's Connor McDonald. So I've sort of projected him going, I guess, that 25 to 35 range. Definitely more in the 30s, I think. But there's any chance that he pops up and someone gets him. He's a midfielder. He's 184 centimeters, another Stingrays boy. So maybe we can split the pick, get both Juddy and McDonald to the club. He's that sort of do-it-all inside mid, but he can kick goals as well, which is very exciting. His strengths are his acceleration, stoppage positioning, accumulation, inside game, athleticism, and tackling. So it's nice to see tackling is a strength of his when some of these players, that's been their deficiency. his improvements have basically been kicking consistency and finishing. So I'll touch on that in his little bit of a snapshot here. So we've got, it's basically primarily an inside mid is where he was playing. So it's an interesting one to, I guess, to throw out his name when we've been looking at these sort of half forwards. But he has spent some time resting in that sort of forward line, and he seems to be doing okay. So he's that kind of inside midfielder that he loves to just accelerate away from the stoppages. And they sort of said stoppages and his positioning was one of his strengths, and it's the way that he's almost like a stoppage beast the way he does it. He's just so smart with his body movements and where he actually puts himself. He seems to just find the ball wherever he does. Wherever he is, the ball seems to find him. When he goes up forward, he's all of a sudden he shrugs someone away. He's there, he's in space, and you just kick the ball to him. But I think, as I said, his issue is that disposal at times. He tends to blaze away, and whether he's, I guess, in front of goal, he blazes away where he could have maybe composed himself a little bit and either hit up a teammate or got the goals properly, sort of butchers the kick, or he misses the goals, and sometimes he does that around the ground as well. So I think he lacks a little bit of that composure. But I think he can kind of teach that, and I think maybe if you give him a bit more confidence and things like that, that you can grow into that kind of player. I know that kicking efficiency is I guess, an improvement, and immediately you go, oh God, we've got so many poor kicks in this team. We probably don't need another one. But I think the knock I put on so many of these like small forward kind of types is they haven't been able to find the ball consistently. It's the inside game they've struggled. That's these guys' bread and butter. And because of the way he has played, and I think that you can almost mold him. He doesn't have to play midfield straight away. You can sit him on that half forward. Maybe he occupies the wing. Maybe that's his position. Or chuck him half forward, full forward. I think he can do a little bit of everything. And unfortunately, he only got like the 4 NAB League games before the season ended. So there hasn't been a lot of footage as well, which might be a big reason on why he's pushed back a lot. But it seems with the club potentially looking at him as an option that there's obviously something there. But he's another one of these exciting prospects that they're in like the 30 range. But I'm like, can we get like 10 of these kind of players? I want 10 picks in the 30.
Sure. Yeah, I'm joining with you on the excitement. I think it definitely seems a bit more, maybe feasible that someone like him's going to be there rather than some of the earlier names, which is good. But yeah, look, mate, I'm just happy that there's so many names that you're going to be stoked with, and then we're going to go into the draft and take none of them, and then we're going to have to talk about how annoyed you are.
I think so. But I think the thing that I like with Connor, like so many of these other guys, is it's not just like, this is all he does. He's the inside mid, and that's just what he does. He wins the ball and gets it out. It's like, he can play forward. He can maybe play on the outside a little bit, because I think that's kind of what we need now. We've got the bulk of our squad. We need these little role players. And I really like what McDonald has, and I think he can really mold a really good player out of there. So that's sort of the bulk of the players that I have there to play that sort of mid-forward role. But unfortunately, with the Liam Jones retirement, we have to look at a couple of other positions, and that being the key defender stocks. Now, I originally had 2 players already that I was going to speak about just in case we went down that avenue, because we sort of spoke in this off-season going, we still need that Jones replacement in a couple of years. Unfortunately, we need the Jones replacement now. It hasn't turned out exactly how we thought it was going to go. So I've got a couple to chat about. So firstly, you may have heard his name a little bit. I know Pommy has spoken about this guy for months and months and months. It is Rhett Bazzo, which is a very, very interesting name. He's a key defender. He has spent some time up forward as well. So maybe he's got that little bit of versatility. He's 195 centimetres, plays the Swan Districts. He's a bit more of an intercept defender, but he has locked down and played that a little bit. His strengths are reading the play, intercept marking, distribution, composure, and versatility, because he can go forward and do a little bit of that as well. Unfortunately, his improvements, what he needs to work on is consistency and repeat defensive efforts, which doesn't sound amazing for a key defender. And I think
I wouldn't have thought so.
I think it'll make sense when I read a bit more of his profile. So his draft range is around that 25 to 35, probably starting to look more like that sort of early 30s. But because this draft just does not have key tall, would not surprise me if someone randomly just goes, I need a key tool, and he goes in the teens because there's just
sure.
no one available and they've picked for need instead. But I think this guy is just that ideal modern day intercept defender. He reads the play extremely well. Kind of likes to play off that back shoulder a little bit more, give him that time to run and jump at the ball, which works really well for the intercepting craft. But sometimes he tends to get caught out where either his opponent's burnt him or he just doesn't get back in time, which kind of reminds you a little bit of Liam Jones at times as well. And I think if you're looking for the perfect intercept Liam Jones replacement, he's that kind of player. I don't think at the moment that he has that sort of one-on-one lockdown capabilities, and potentially with his height at only being 195, is he, I guess, tall enough to do that role as well? That's going to be another question mark on him. I wonder whether he's more suited towards that third tall rather than second. But I guess where he beats Jones is his kicking. He went at 71% efficiency by foot in the Colts. So he knows what he's doing. He seems pretty composed down there, making sure he gets the right option. So, yeah, he's an interesting one. I would just worry with him that I see him a bit more as being that intercept defender. And I'm not sure, I guess, if we're going to go all out and go, okay, this draft, we're getting that key tall, whether he's the perfect guy.
You're not backing him in to get a couple more centimeters in? Surely. Come on.
Do the Patrick Cripps and just grow another whole foot by the time he's 21.
Yeah, no, look, it all sounds good to me. I mean, I definitely am still on my point of going for the targets we've gone for, but I like that these options are there. And like you said, definitely a chance that someone like this gets picked higher. And then if he's there and we think that he's the best guy available, I would not be upset at all.
And I think we will touch on after this potentially splitting the pick as well. So there's a chance that maybe we split, get a defender and get one of these other guys that maybe might drift down the draft board as well. So at least there's some options at this pick, because there'd be nothing worse than nothing like, we need a key defender. Oh, all of them are gone by 15. And you're like, well, we're getting no one. Levi, do you want to come back, mate?
Please.
And so the next one is probably the person that I'm going to sound the most excited about and talk this person up the most. His name, it'll pop up on the screen here. It's Aaliyah. Now, this guy is an absolute weapon. So he's a key defender. He's 196 centimeters, plays for Central District. He's a tall defender, loves to intercept, which I know I kind of said a little bit was a knock on Rhett Bazzo, but I'll explain why I think he just is one of the better prospects. So his strengths are athleticism, intercept marking, vertical leap, versatility, and upside. So I know you liked that earlier. You've got it again. Improvements, they've basically just said raw and consistency. And it all makes sense in a second. So look, Leak is probably one of my favorites in the draft. I've said that about a couple, but definitely as far as all the key position players, he's my favorite. This kid literally could be anything. The issue is he is so raw. This dude is so green. But I mean, you look at his name and you go, Aaliyah. Oh, does he play like Aaliyah? And it's a lazy comparison again. But from what you saw last year of like that All-Australian, just intercept marking everything, pure athletic, agile, ridiculous leap, that's what this guy has. I implore everyone to like watch the highlights of this guy, because you'll watch them and literally be like, this guy's the number one pick in the draft. It is insane. Just mountains over people, does everything. The issue is he's that raw, newer to the game kind of guy where he doesn't have everything so far, but he has that athleticism. He has all those raw traits ready to go. And originally I thought he was just going to be that basic kind of intercept marker. But from a lot of the, I guess, highlights and footage that I've been able to see of him, I've seen him give everything to knock the ball to the ground, to just get the ball away from the opposing forward, which I probably didn't see as much with Bazzo, where they were actually talking about, he didn't have those repeat defensive efforts. I see that with Aaliyah. Issue is with Aaliyah again, he's not going to come in the first year. He needs time to develop. And look, there is a chance that he is just that. He's just this raw talent that never kicks on and never becomes that superstar. Like, I don't think his floor is that high, but I genuinely think his ceiling, like, this is going to sound stupid, but he could be like the best player of this draft because of just what he has going for him. It's just whether he can put it all together, get in that right system and develop. But I think if he can, he's going to be one of the best intercept potential just lockdown defenders in the league. He's insane. I've talked him up way too much for a guy that
mate.
I've almost got to go as in this like pick 30 range, but it's insane. Like the fluctuation on this guy. Like he could literally go anywhere from like 15 to 40 just because it's whether a club early wants to take that risk on the upside or whether they need someone to play now. But I think he'll definitely go around our pick.
I think everybody listening right now, mate, is got their fingers crossed that we're taking this fella. No, everything else you said is out the window because Leak is the man. Brownlow Leak.
Oh, but I think that the issue is, I guess, with him being that rawness, it's like if we need someone right now, he's not it. So whether you get him and then you still get someone next year, I don't know. But yeah, he's someone I'm super excited about. But I do have one more defender for you. This guy, not so raw. He is Charlie Dean. So he's actually a bit of a mature aged player. So he's a key defender, 195 centimeters, plays for Williamstown. He's a lockdown or sort of intercept defender. His strengths are marking, reading the play, versatility, and work rate. His improvements are agility and consistency. So it's a bit of an interesting one. So I've got him in that kind of 30 plus range. I don't exactly know where he's going to go. It's really hard to pick exactly. I'd say personally probably 35 plus is where I see him going. But he is that mature body. So he didn't get drafted in his draft year. He spent a year or 2 years for Williamstown, getting a bit of a, I guess, sort of couple of years of footy behind him. So people know what he's got. And I think having that mature option, it's probably a little bit more suited to someone who can come in and basically play straight away. And I think he is that kind of player, sort of compared to the rest who aren't as ready to go. It gives him something. He's 20 years old. So he's actually coming off a season where he won the best young player in the VFL. So fun fact for this one, the last 14 players to do so all got drafted basically that year. A couple of players as well we've got who won those awards and were drafted were Luke Ryan, Bailey Fritsch, and our own Nick Newman. All won this award and have some pretty decent AFL careers out of them. Basically, with this guy, he's a hardworking key defender. He can play lockdown, but also loves the intercept. So he's kind of got a little bit of the best of both worlds. Reads the play really well down back. He might not have the ceiling of Alir that I sort of just spoke about, but I think his mature body just might fit the need currently. I think if we split the pick and we get a pick, I think he should be available if we ended up trading a little bit back. And I kind of, if I'm Nick Austin right now and looking at the guys available with a Red Bazzo and Alir, I'm probably not super confident that they're exactly what we need right now to get it done. I'm kind of going, okay, if you've got an extra pick, get Dean in, and then next year maybe get that even young prospect if we didn't get enough out of this guy. But I kind of like him as a bit more of an option just because he can actually come in straight away.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the conversation that they're having internally, then I guess it makes sense. And it's potential that that's the case. Maybe they haven't got faith that Marchie's going to be healthy. They don't know if Lewis is going to be able to deliver. And they are going to want another option that can come straight in. But I'm reading between the lines a little bit. Would it be fair to say that you think it's more likely that we split the pick than trade up?
I would assume so. Because there was word before Jones even got retired that we were either maybe looking to trade back or trade away the pick. Obviously, I think we have to take one in the draft with the other two rookie selections that we're going to make. You need to make 3 selections. So it sounded like we were willing to do that. And I'm not against even just trading back a couple of spots if we can strengthen our draft picks for next season. Because again, hopefully all the under 18s will have a full year that you can back them in. You kind of know what you're getting. If we can strengthen our draft hand for next year, I'd probably be more inclined to do that. Or even if we can split the pick into 2 now that we've got that extra list spot. There's so many guys I've mentioned around this sort of draft range, and I've got a couple more to talk about if we do split the pick.
Mm.
As I said, I want like 10 picks around this, almost like 20 to 35, because I think this is where you're going to find a couple of gems. Because I guess so many of them can be dart throws, and maybe if you get more dart throws, we'll find a hidden gem. So maybe we need to do that.
Definitely. Yep, I back that logic in.
Yeah, so I guess looking at that, so I've got like 3 screens going on. If you could see what I was trying to deal with, you'd be very impressed that I've been managed to keep myself composed to some degree in this
Jeez,
one.
humble brag.
But yeah, so we've talked a little bit, I guess, about trying to actually split this draft pick. And I guess after I've talked about a fair few of these players, do you think we should split 25 or trade back to strengthen next year's draft hand?
Maybe I'll have to hit you with a counter question for that.
Yeah.
Do you think if we get compensation, it influences your decision on this? Because if we were going to be getting a pick, I would be saying for sure, let's just keep 25 and roll with one guy one guy with higher potential than moving back. But I don't know. Where do you see that?
If we got a compensation, you could almost argue can we trade up? Can we put those two together and go further up and get someone in the team?
True.
It's interesting. I think I've done a little bit of research and seeing if we actually could split the picks. So I've looked at a couple of teams just to, I guess, verbalize this for you. So Geelong have picked 30, 32, and 34, which probably makes them the best candidate. I've done a bit of that draft point calculator too. So if you get our pick 25 and 64 for their 30 and 32, it equates to our 857 to their basically 1,200. So there's a couple of hundred in it. It's very close. And normally if a team tries to trade up, they normally have to pay slight overs anyway because there's probably a player that they want. So I think that's probably close enough that you could get that deal done. Or even if you end up getting 30 and 34 instead of the 32, I don't think that's too much of a loss because I think I've named so many players that I think should be available in this range. If we go, there's probably 2 other clubs that I'll just touch on as well. I won't bore you with the draft points because it's just too many numbers to throw at you. But West Coast have 29 and 35. So again, a little bit around that range. And then Sydney's, I guess, a little less desirable, but they do have 31 and 39. I'm not sure if they need those picks for like academy or whatever. So maybe they can't do it. Those are the teams that at least have some picks around there. So I think if we ended up, with 30 and 32 instead of 25, I think it's not that far away that we can still probably do some damage. And I'm not against it personally.
Yeah, no, when you put it that way, like any of those kind of deals seem pretty desirable to me. I mean, with that last pick, did you say it's 61, 64?
64, I think it's gone to. But I mean, who knows what part these picks end up being with everything that gets pushed back. It's too confusing these days. It's like, pick 25 now 27 and I hate it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, you're really not. I don't know. I'm sure there's been some Brownlow medalist or some All Australian that has been drafted pick 64, but you're not really super excited about who's coming there. So if you're talking about 2 players in the early 30s, like the Geelong one, I feel like that's pretty hard to say no to, especially with if a player like you're saying, potentially the player that we want at 25 is even going to be there at 30 just because it's so different for every team.
I think we're going to be one of the most exciting teams on, I guess, that day too, just to see what we do because it's almost going to, for me, come down to who's available and who's actually gone off the draft board. Because if I sit back at pick 25 and all of a sudden, like 6 of the guys that I was maybe hoping to get one of them are all available, you could easily argue you just get the best one and get them done. But if you could potentially go, if I can trade back 5 spots, still mathematically get one of the guys we wanted, and bolster either next year's or get one more pick in this draft, I think you take that. So I'm really excited to see what we do. I think the Jones retirement throws even more spanners into the works about whether we look for a key defender, whether we just get 2 picks and bin off the defender till next year. Who knows? There's still obviously the option of just drafting one person and then getting a couple of train-on players and doing what we did to, I think, Oscar McDonald in the end, or a Callum Moore, where you get those kind of players training for a little bit, find the best one, and then give them the last, I guess, spot on the list. So, I mean, we've definitely got so many options in what we could do, which I think is somewhat exciting, which is why I think I got so into doing this draft and looking into all these players, because I thought there's a chance that we do pick up a couple of these guys.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely glad you've done this exercise, because it's gotten me a lot more excited for a draft pick that, usually we're thinking about who we're taking right at the top end, at least a first round pick. So it's a bit hard to get excited about these kind of areas, but I'm pumped now.
Yeah, and look, I've got basically 3 more players I will quickly run through, because in the weird case that we do trade back, and now we've got these picks in the mid-late 30s, I thought, okay, I'll throw some names that should hopefully still be in this range that we can maybe get excited about. And maybe I can actually put my hand up and say, I've picked the guy that we ended up getting. I think that's more what I'm trying to do.
That's what it's all about at this point.
So first name here is Angus Sheldrick, which again, ripper name. I'm happy for us just to draft Big Gus. So he's a midfielder, 179 centimeters from Claremont. He's an inside mid who hits the scoreboard. Seems like we've got a couple of these in this draft. His strengths are contested ball, strength, work rate, toughness, consistency, and scoreboard impact. His improvements are kick consistency and athleticism. So this guy I sort of have around the 30 to 40 range. I think he's probably going to go more that sort of mid-30s. I picked 35. I think Carlton had in his latest projections. He's basically an inside midfielder who works really hard to find his ball. He tends to be somewhat pretty consistent and has no trouble just finding the football. He's one of those players that wherever he seems to be, he's got the pill in his hands, which I like. And he likes to sort of burst away from the stoppages. He likes to kick goals. He kicked 5 goals from 9 games in the Waffle Colts, which I think is really exciting to know that he can kick a couple. His size is probably a little bit of the issue, because he's that little bit smaller at 179 centimeters, weighing only 88 kilos. But I think what I like from this is, I guess, those, as I mentioned so many times, those who tend to make it, that aren't the busts, are those that have that inside game. They know how to win the football. They don't go missing in games. And that's his strength. His strength is staying in games and winning the football. And I think because of his height, he maybe works as being that smaller forward. We can play him on the half forward, play him on the wing. But if he wants to pinch hit in the midfield, he can. His last sort of few months as well of footy were really exceptional in the under-19s. He basically was the player of the carnival by the end. So he's got that high work rate, which I think we love about these kind of players. So he's another one of these exciting prospects that I think there's going to be players that just slide. We don't know where they're going, and all of a sudden become a superstar.
I like it. Yeah, look, I'm not going to have too many comments on these last few guys, but just like you're getting ahead by getting these names out there so you'll take the glory, I'm just going to get ahead and say, welcome to the Baggers, Gus, and we're glad to have you. And then we can just play this back on Gus Pass. That's it.
Beautiful. Well, that's it. It's all about just making sure I've named enough players here so I can take a little clip and go on, oh, I told you we were going to get him. Yeah. I'm a genius. Call me the new draft expert, I reckon. Look, so the next player is Cooper Murley, which is, again, a bit of a great name here. He is a mid-forward, 178 centimetres, plays for Norwood. He's a speedy outside midfielder. His strengths are production, speed, endurance, skills, and class. His improvements are size and strength. So, again, it seems like a lot of these players that play this almost outside role, or that we're looking at, that have slid, their issues seem to be that they're a little bit skinnier. They maybe don't have that strength and things like that. And that's why that they're in this position. If they had the strength that they had, if they ticked all the boxes, that'd probably be a top 10 draft pick. But that's why you've got to hopefully find the player that can come through here. So this kid, what I really like about him, he is just speed. He is so goddamn quick. He loves to accelerate from the contest, be that outside relief. He isn't great, I guess, in that contested side of the game, but every time he sort of played for them, the teammates would always try and find him on the outside, and then he would just set everything up. He'd just have that burst to just explode through, run on the wing all day, and send the ball forward, which I think is something that we do lack.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
again, is he someone that is going to struggle because he doesn't have that inside game? It's interesting. But I think, yeah, he's really good as well with his precision kicking, particularly over long distances. I kind of think like Lockie O'Brien when I see that. That's sort of, I guess, a little bit how he plays. Whether he can be better, who knows? But I think he's a really good prospect. And look, he doesn't tend to hit the scoreboard a lot. But look, so if we're after this goal scoring mid half forward, I'm not sure he is that, but I think he can definitely occupy that spot on the wing and be that, I guess, transition player.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely seems a bit more in the smaller mold. Yeah, I mean, it's all. I'm obviously fascinated to see what avenue we're going to go with this because you know they might be on such a different page to us, and a guy like this might be exactly what they want. One of the smaller, speedier type.
And yeah, as far as his range, I sort of have him literally 35 to 50 range. He could literally go anywhere. It's so hard to know with some of these later guys. It tends to be a dart throw. But I think he's one of the more exciting picks in this. I sort of have him in that sort of late 30s. But again, so many of these guys could slide. So who knows? Last player I'll chat about is Sam Banks. So this player here, he's from Tassie, which I like to see. We don't tend to get too many Tassie players here. He's a mid defender, 187 centimeters, plays halfback or can push up onto that wing as well. Strengths are kicking, decision-making, athleticism, upside, and rebounding. His improvements, like many, inside game and defensive pressure. So maybe not exactly what we like to see. His range is very similar to, honestly, with Cooper Murley, where it's 35 to 50. Who knows? But if we trade back, he's someone that I think I earmarked as a potential. I liked a little bit of what they had to fit our need. He's sort of that, he's really the stereotypical outside player. He doesn't accumulate a lot of the ball, but he's damaging when he gets it, which is, again, why he's probably in this draft range. He has great run and carry. He's even better precision kicking. His deficiencies, again, like I said, is that inside game. He can go in and out of games and struggle to find the ball. His defensive pressure at times as well isn't amazing. But again, it's that small frame. He wants to try and get there and he can run. He's just not probably big enough for his frame size to lay those tackles, which is a little bit frustrating. But he's breaking the line speed and the way he can utilize his kicks going forward. He creates so many scores, and I think that if that's what we're really earmarking for this, mid half forward kind of guy, someone that can set the play up, lower their eyes inside 50, and actually hit the targets, because we seem to have some other options to maybe be the goal scorers. I think we could do a lot worse than get a play like this late if we had that draft pick.
Totally. It's so exciting, all the different avenues that we can go with this, and then we're not locked in on we must get this kind of fit player, and then we're doing that reaching if the guys that we wanted aren't there. So, oh mate, there's a plethora of options.
100%. And look, so they're all the players that I have had a bit of a look at. I've given a bit of a profile. Let me know if there's anyone that stands out. If you've done a bit of research, if you have found some players that you like, let us know.
Please.
Reply to the YouTube video, hit us up on all our social medias at Navy Blue Corner.
Hey guys, sorry for this weird, I guess, spliced in clip of just me, no Lockie. Unfortunately, we basically got to the end of the podcast and then realized hadn't answered some of you guys' questions. So unfortunately, Lockie had some prior engagements he had to go and tend to, and we wanted to get this out ASAP. So thought I'd quickly jump on. We'll see how I go without my main man Lockie here. I may need him for some of the hard-hitting questions that you guys have thrown at us. Unfortunately, we pretty much answered the main one that was given to us by a lot of people. And that basically just was, who is going to replace Liam Jones? It's probably the biggest question, the one I wanted to ask Lockie the most. And we're pretty much going, it's Lewis Young for now. He's the tall guy, the one that was brought in. He's a young guy. He's got a bit of experience in a really good doggies team. So let's back him in. Whoever ends up taking that spot, because who knows, that's who we think, but maybe they think otherwise. Let's back them in and support them. This is probably the biggest time to support the boys. As much as I know the Jones thing is, it's frustrating and it's sad to lose such a key pillar of this team. I think in some degree, obviously, think of Liam Jones because he has, we can agree, we can disagree with whatever he's done. He's thought this strongly about it, that he has quit his job. He's stopped the thing that he loves the most, and he's a human being and seems like a really nice guy, and he's Carlton. So let's support him, be nice to him, but then also the boys that are still there have their whole season's now looking a little bit different. There's changed. One of their mates is no longer there, so they'll be feeling it too. So let's get around these guys. Let's really galvanize and try to get positive into that future. So a question in here from Timmy Dub. He says, believe we need to rely on team defense rather than individual efforts of Wieders and Jonesy in particular. Notwithstanding, can our current stocks fill his shoes? I think we've probably touched on that a little bit, but I love the team defense chat, which I don't think we covered enough, where this was the big chatting point pretty much all season, and it will be like all off season of can we figure out this team defense? And it's almost a bit of a blessing in a way to now we don't have to rely on Jones. The squad is almost forced to go, okay, we don't have Jones to bail us out every time because, him and Wiedering, the amount of one-on-ones they won where they shouldn't have, and we probably should have conceded another 19 goals in a row at stages, but just their defensive effort stopped it. We now need to go, okay, this is a system. And maybe we can make a player like a Gov that gets thrown out there, like a Lewis Young, whoever it is. If we can get the right structure, it should not matter who the individual is because everything works. And that's where I'm hoping we can get to. Hopefully that is the case. But I think, talking about team defense is the big talking point all off season. Hopefully this maybe is the little trigger that these guys needed to really knuckle down and go, okay, we really need to get this sorted. Otherwise, we're no chance. Has a really good second part to this question where he asked with, I guess, Charlie back, JSOS doing everything right in the forward line. Is this the opportunity for Gov to go back? And is this the opportunity that Gov's been waiting for? It's interesting because, I don't really know if Gov will work down back. He's never really played there. We've seen it with Jones as that forward that couldn't hack it, goes down back and has all those traits. We know the brother thing with Mitch. I'm just not too sure, but at least this is an opportunity. And, you mentioned that forward line. You've now got TDK or Pitt potentially resting down there if we're going to play the two rucks. So where's that opportunity for him? And it opens up a chance for him to also, I think, make himself a bit more important to this squad. A lot of people saying, does he get another contract next time around when this one's over? If he can make himself an important member of this squad in the forward line and in defense as just a key pillar, chuck him anywhere, he's the Mr. Fix-It. That's going to be amazing for us. And maybe this is just the kickstart that Gov needed. A change of position, something fresh. Who knows? I can't wait to see how it all plays out. It's thrown some spanners into the works, but it's positive because there's so many different ways we can go with this. And for me, that's exciting anyway. We have one here from this is Jake B. He says, actually, no question, just excited to listen, need some footy content. And I think, that's it. It's fun to come back and talk about something. I know we wanted to make this a nice little chill, optimistic time where we look at these potential players coming in. We basically say everyone is the next Chris Judd, everyone's the next superstar, and it's the optimism's flying high before we get into the stressful part of the season. And I know there's extra weight next season, new coach. Can we do better than last year? Can we finally make finals? This has almost thrown more pressure onto everything, which is a good thing and a bad thing, but at least there's so much to talk about and trying to see who fills his shoes. It's a great discussion. Again, love to hear who you guys think it can be. Can Gov do it? Can Gov finally go down back and nail his spot in this best 22? It's what I want to know from you guys. So let us know. Tweet at us, message us at Navy Blue Corner, reply on the YouTube video if you are watching there, or head over and do it anyway. Definitely do that. And then I've got two more. I'm going to go straight into Pommy's question because this is an absolute ripper. So Pommy in Oz asks, would you rather fight 100 beavers that are Liam Jones sized or 100 Liam Jones sized beavers? So little Liam Jones coming at me, or 100 big beavers. Jeez. Liam Jones, he fights hard. I don't know what's worse. A Liam Jones fist coming at me flying, or a beaver with those big teeth. I'm going to take in the beaver. I don't want any part of the courageous Liam Jones. If he'll knock himself out just to play footy, just to try and, stop a football, God knows what he's going to do to me in a fight. Yes, I'll take the Beavers in whatever fashion. I'm not taking on Liam Jones there. Thanks for that, Pommy. And if you're not subscribing to Pommy in Oz on YouTube, I don't know what you're doing. You probably already know who he is. You're probably already subscribed. But if there's someone out there that isn't, follow him for some great content. He does obviously great Carlton stuff, but he does some other stuff as well. So definitely check it out. Loves his EPL as well. So we'll definitely get onto that. And then last question here to wrap things up, because I've chatted for too long without Lockie here, and it feels weird. It is last one from Michael Saravolo. He says, all the best to Jonesy. Do we think this might be a blessing in disguise? I have this thing about players like Ed Kerno, Liam Jones, etc., that although serviceable, won't take us to the next level. And that is a very interesting question. I think we all know my thoughts on Ed Kerno. And I think I've said a lot of times that I think that the big step that we need to take to be that premiership kind of team is we need someone to go past Ed Kerno. And to some degree, I think I sell him a bit short, and maybe we don't respect him enough. I know he does and offers so much that we don't see. It's those intangibles off the field. He's such a great Carlton man, great for culture. He spends so much time with guys coming into the club, and I just wish we could see so much more than what he does, because he leaves everything he has on the football field, and I think he does so much off it. It'd be great for us to maybe get around him a bit more, and I'm the one that tends to bash him a lot, so yeah, maybe we underrate him. But I think as far as maybe like the football talent on field, which is I guess what we're talking about here, is as far as the skill level, we need to maybe start to get past these players, particularly because on age, they're still playing better than a lot of other guys out there, and maybe this is a blessing if we just chat about Liam Jones, because we know his deficiencies. He struggles with kicking. His distribution can cost us goals. At least we don't have to see Liam Jones going straight to the 45 and just sailing straight over his head. And then sometimes he does get caught out wanting to play that intercept role. And a lot of his amazing spoils almost come from him being out of position and have to scramble and do the savior spoil just to fix, I guess, his positioning. And I think with Wiedering being his age as well, we need someone to be that partner with him for the next 10 years, for Wiedering's rest of his career. And maybe this is a good time to go, okay, we need someone that is better. It forces us to have to find that. And sometimes that's a good thing, because I think for sometimes in teams and in anything, you can get complacent with what you have and you go, well, I know what I'm getting from this. This is good. And now you're almost forced to go, how are we getting better? Is it structure? Is it system? Is it player? Can we get two guys to do the Liam Jones role in there? Get the intercept defender and find someone that can sacrifice and play that defensive role. Who knows? And I think I've said this like 1,000 times already, but it's an exciting time to see exactly what happens, and let us know. Do you think that this is maybe a blessing, that maybe we can find someone that doesn't have those deficiencies? It's so much to think about. But look, that's going to pretty much wrap this episode up. It's been a big one, so thanks for sticking by. A lot of chatter about a lot of people that I guess no one seems to know heaps and heaps and heaps about the drafties. So hopefully it's helped. Chuck a couple of names out there, and hopefully I've landed one. I mean, I've named about 30. It'd be pretty stiff if none of these guys end up coming to us. We will have one more episode to end the season. It will be the draft review episode where we chat about who actually came to the club, and if there was any crazy draft picks getting swapped, who knows? Was there any soft style wheeling and dealing from Nick Osted? Be fun to see. Just want to say big thanks to everyone that has supported this channel. Again, follow us on the social medias at Navy Blue Corner. Go onto the YouTube as well. Subscribe to us. We're doing a lot more video content now. Trying to get our faces out there and interact a little bit more with you. There'll be plenty of lives throughout next season. We'll have plenty of stuff in the preseason just to build up the year. And chat everything Carlton. But yes, I've chatted for way too long without Lockie in particular. So look, that's going to finish this episode. See you guys next time.